everyone, welcome to a fresh new session of Azure Trailblazer. I welcome you all on the behalf of Azure developer community. And today this session is about building a secure and scalable Azure infra using multiple Azure networking services and some basic Azure fundamentals. And for the same, we have our Azure Trailblazer and our expert speaker, uh, Raghu Reddy sir, and he is a DevOps engineer having an 8+ of years of experience in cloud and DevOps. And he has been working as a senior DevOps engineer at Zscaler. And we have just started this Trailblazer initiative to share all these experiences of all these industry leaders with all the community folks that you can grasp from their experience, and you can build your Azure applications and you can build more projects around Azure. The main focus is on the hands-on part, and this is something we are running right now. And this is we are starting from an online session and looking forward to meet you in person as well. So, not wasting much more time, I'll quickly pass on the stage to Raghu Reddy sir. Over to you, sir.
Yeah. Thank you, Lakshit, for the introduction. Good evening, everyone. So myself, Raghu Reddy, I will be speaking on Azure, the fundamentals of networking as well as storage. So myself, I'm working as a senior DevOps engineer at Zscaler. And with respect to that, so I'm like a certified trainer for Microsoft as well as a Kubernetes certified admin. With along with that, I do have certifications in Azure with respect to DevOps as well as the administration part. So today's session we will majorly be covering how this will be fundamentals to Azure, how the Azure infrastructure has the different components and what all we with respect to the networking and storage. Lakshit, feel free if anyone have any doubts or any queries, feel free to ask in between. I will be happy to assist you or clarify that. So this will be kind of mixture. Majority, I will show you the entire like the steps to create basic components and the services on Azure with the help of Azure portal, and how you can start learning yourself or doing a hands-on on Azure with respect to on a basic fundamental level. So once we are done, then we will have a specific section covering all the sections on that particular networking as well as storage. Then we will move ahead with the Q&A. So that's an overview how we will have. To start with, first we will let's go with the Azure portal. So before going into slides itself, so I just want to make sure that anyone who want to learn or you want to explore the Azure, right? So the domain will be portal.azure.com. So you have to go through a login steps once you have a subscription or you have an access to Azure. So this is how the interface will look like. I will just walk through. So these are the basic resources that you have on the left. It's complete like resource groups and everything. And you can have your custom dashboards. And if anyone want to search for any specific service, assume that you want to look for SQL. So just go ahead and search for SQL and you will have. So I'm just giving a very vanilla flavor of the navigation to the portal level. So this is where it goes, and you do have a setting at this button. When you see this configuration, you can simply change your subscriptions or any of your filters, or basically filters on the subscription level, or view, or you want a you're a fan of a dark theme, you can simply change it. All those particular can be done here. So going back, so with this particular portal, we will start with our basic introduction on the Azure side. uh, Fine. To start with, yeah, this is my introduction. Feel free to reach me on LinkedIn if you have any queries or you want to come, like, be part of this community. To start with, so what we are trying to cover on these fundamentals of network and storage. So we have two separate. So we will try both. So we will have a 30 minutes for network and 30 minutes for storage. So just to make sure that we do have a Q&A at the end to answer your queries. To start with network, so Azure, we have something called as Azure VNet. So we'll deep dive into VNet, how to create that, and within VNet we can what we can do and what is the benefit of those particular VNets and subnets. And then we will play along the security groups. That's the major one of the security feature or component that we leverage in day-to-day basis on every cloud engineer. Then we will deep dive into na Azure load balancer. We'll have an overview. Then we'll move to an storage, with respect to storage and what are the different types of storage redundancies, how you can access the storage or what are the different types. So being a developer friend, how you can start accessing the storage account, or being an individual who doesn't want to be like end user who want a limited access. So all those, as well as a small application given by Azure. So how we can log in and check all those particular part. So starting with VNet. So what is VNet? So Azure VNet itself, it's a virtual service. It says that whatever network that you used to have in on premises, usually you used to have your switch routers and all those components, those are gone. Now what you are doing is you are creating those same components of it, but on a logical segregation. So these are nothing but an isolated and logically defined network within Azure. So even every cloud provider have their own set of what we can say VNets. Everyone has their different, like AWS or VPC and Azure has VNets. So what is the advantage of that? So with the help of VNet, you can secure your connections as well as the resources within that VNet. So you have a VNet, you will deploy all your components, virtual machines, database, applications, and number of things in that particular VNet. And that particular VNet you can control, you can modify, you can make those necessary changes. And its majorly benefit is that it's a network segregation. So assume you have an building an application where you want API based subnet and you want a database. So database should not be exposed to public, and application should be exposed to an end user from an HTTPS protocol or 443. So you created two different subnets. So this logical separation or network segmentation can be happen with the help of using VNet. So we'll look how we create a VNet within that. So what happens in a VNet? VNet, when you create a VNet, you have to define a network range. So once you define network range, you can break that network range into multiple subnets. So VNet can have multiple subnets, each serving different purpose. So there are a lot of different case studies for this. Like assume that you want a subnet for your region wise. So you have a office in India across multiple regions. So like US, sorry, in India you have Mumbai, Pune, Hyderabad, Delhi. So for every region you can have a different subnet just to be like a segregation, or you can go with an application level segregation. Like for application, you can have a subnet. For database, you can have a different subnet. For your backups, you can have a different subnet where you can store your all your backup related applications or anything. So this particular, and each subnet can be segregated, and each subnet can have its own security group restriction, so that if you have a subnet and you want to allow traffic, then only you can allow, otherwise you can restrict the traffic on any subnet level. So this is the benefit or advantage of the segregation. And the major thing when you're trying to do a subnet calculation, or you want to create multiple, is crucially planning the IP address management. So you might start up, like assume that you want a 254 or you want basically a 300 IPs. So you create those, but with this particular day to day, we the development coming and the phase of this development, so you suddenly realize that IPs are no longer like have been exhausted. Then you again go and redo a replanning that how you can do it. So whenever you start with any application or projects or any of these particular subnet creations, make sure you have a good understanding of that particular segregation and as well as the IP management. So what is the use case where you can use the VNet? So VNets are used for isolating environments. So you can have a dev environment in one subnet or one VNet. You can have a QA environment in another VNet. You can have a production in another VNet. So every, like as per your requirement. So you have your requirement, as per your requirement, you can create your multiple VNets. And one more advantage of VNet is like you have your on-premise network one sitting it's this side, and you want to connect to a cloud. So you create a VNet and you do a VNet pairing. So this is also possible in this particular VNet concept or the Azure VNet. So that's on the VNet. So we'll go with the VNet and a small demo on the VNet. So we'll try each and every slide. So once the VNet is done, then we will have a small demo. It's very simple on the VNet level. So on the left hand side, so you see a virtual network. So that's where you create a virtual network VNet. You simply create a VNet. You say like you just name it. So in Azure, before going into that, just remember anything that you create in Azure will need to be part of a resource group. So resource group is the first level of a component that you create in Azure. So you want any resources, n number of resources, all need to be part of one resource group or multiple resource groups. But when you begin, the first level component or object in Azure is a resource group in which you dump or you create all your resources. So we simply create a resource group. We'll simply name it as Azure session India. Right, and we can choose any region as per your requirement. So majorly we will go with US East US 2. Tax we are not going at this point. We'll simply validation done. We'll simply create a resource group. So resource group is a logical. It's not something a component that gets deployed in the background. It's just a logical box that create within Azure, so that all the components that you create will be part of that particular resource group. And remember, if you delete a resource group, all the components, resources which are part of that particular resource group will get deleted automatically. Some exceptions are there, but make sure you don't delete a resource group on a, directly. You whatever resource you want, you can delete on a specific resource level. So at this resource Azure session India, we don't have any resource at this point. So we'll start creating those resources one by one. So first one is a virtual network. We'll create a simple virtual network. We'll also try to do a diagram on this base. So we'll give us VNet. So based upon this, I will say VNet, why not dev, VNet dev 001. Or just I'm just segregating, saying as it's a VNet belonging to dev environment, and just a numeric, just for naming convention, I say 001. So I have a VNet that belongs to dev environment. So it will just the validation. Let's go back one by one. So we'll also try to see what are the options. So I just given this, going back, these are all the advanced options, or anything that you are wanted, you can select those IP addresses. This is what we are interested at this point. As I said, right, VNet, along within VNet you will have a multiple subnets. VNet can have multiple subnet, each serving different purpose. So as I say, I have a VNet belongs to dev environment. So I will create a one subnet. So I will say subnet template is default. I'm not changing anything. So I will say, why not? I will say dev UI. So our UI team need a specific subnet. So I will say okay. And yeah, address change is fine. I simply add that. Then I create a one more subnet. I will say QA. Uh, why not database? I will say dev DB subnet. And dev DB subnet. Let me rename it. Just for understanding, we will simply have a hyphen subnet at the end, so that when you see all the components, you will not get confused. So I have a dev UI subnet, I have a dev database subnet. Why not have one more called dev API? Dev API subnet. So this is where I was talking about planning your subnet. So we have a range of 10 dot. So based upon that, so assume that I have a API which has a lot more requirement of IP addresses. I will simply change the /23 or /24 base /21. Okay, it says, oh, based upon this, I need to change this value. So I will simply keep this as a 24 itself. And we are not going with this routes and security at this point. We'll simply add. Then I will simply go. So we have a VNet and we have 3 subnets. We will simply go and create that. It's going through validation, and I click on create. It's a logical component that's getting created in the behind of Azure. So once done, you anytime you create any resource, so all those progress and what is the status, or I can say the basically a notification tab, it comes in this particular section. So at this particular, you can see a bell icon. It says what is happening. So deployment is happening is basically what it means is a resource is getting deployed in the background. So what I will do is, in the meantime, let's start with the wait. We will wait. So VNet is getting created along with. We'll wait for a few minutes. It will getting completed. Yeah. So resource got created. We'll go to resource and we'll see. Yeah, this is the VNet which I was talking about, virtual network. So what this virtual network is, virtual network has an IP address range of 10.0.0.0/16. Make sure as per your application requirement, you have this pre-managed, or I can say pre-configured, or not pre-configured, but pre-calculated. So you make sure you don't have IP addresses that overlap with other VNets or other subnet or on-premise IP addresses. That's one thing you need to be careful of. Let's go with address spaces. So you will see this is what we have taken as. So within address spaces, so we will see the subnets. So that we have created a 3 subnets. So every subnet has its own IP address range. So belonging from this, so you will see these are the total number of available IPs. So what we are trying with this is we created a subnet, we created a VNet, and along with VNet, we created one subnet. So what is the use of these VNets? So as I said, we will try to deploy our applications or our infrastructure within this VNet. So what do you mean by infrastructure? So I can say it might be a database. I can say it might be a virtual machine. So I will simply create a new virtual machine. I'm going with the default configuration. Within this default configuration, I will just select, okay, this belongs to this. As I said, like every component need to be part of resource group. So this is what the resource group is. I will say it's dev dev VM001. It's just a virtual machine belongs to developer with the environment. I will say it's fine. Everything is fine. uh, Sizes, so it's as per your memory and CPU allocations. You can simply see and you can select whatever size you required. I will go with the least one for my session. I will go with 214, that is 2 CPU and 4 RAM. For now I will make it simple. I will just say cloud as my user and password something which is hard to crack. 3. And yeah, this is where we are come and we will stop at this point. So why we are stopping? So you see something called as inbound port rules, and we at this point are only going with SSH. So it's a Linux based machine, that is basically Ubuntu flavor, and we are just allowing 22. So what we are doing is just allowing a port 22, and what is that is called as a security group. We will cover in the next slide. So I'm just keeping this 22. Just remember, we'll discuss this in upcoming slide. Disk, nothing, we just move ahead with the networking. Now this is where we said, like, so every component you want to deploy or any component that you want to deploy will be part of one resource group, and you can segregate or you can have that within your virtual network. So this is the virtual network that we created that belongs to dev. So this is an application of dev, right? So we have a dev. So I will say let's go with deployed an API or UI. Is It's up to you. So based upon your requirement, you select public IP. Yeah, I say I need a public IP. That's fine. Make everything. We are not touching anything at this point. Let's go with this management. Nothing. It's fine. These are the default. Monitoring advanced is fine, tax is fine. So we are not looking into virtual machine. We are just trying to create a virtual machine within a VNet, and we will see the options which we can have within a subnet and the security groups that we are about to go discuss. So by the time this virtual machine gets deployed, we'll go back to the slide and we'll see the next is security groups. So what is security groups? That's a very interesting and very powerful feature of any of the cloud provider that they provide in AWS, Azure, Google, or Oracle maybe. So security policies. NSG, which stands for Network Security Group, allow you to define security policies using rules that specify allowed or denied traffic based on various criteria. Rules can be created for both inbound, outbound, or they are evaluated based on priority. So this is just a statement given. So what we are trying to do is, so you have a component, assume that this is a component, a virtual machine. So you want to allow traffic or you want to deny, or for inbound or outbound. So this traffic which is coming into this particular component or any component, you can restrict, you can manage, or you can simply add a rules that says which traffic need to be allowed based upon a criteria. A number of things you can do. So that's basically a security policies, or that's the power of the NSG that we have. And filtering. So NSG provides a granular control over network traffic by allowing you to alter traffic based on source. That's more interesting. So you say an traffic coming from an XYZ region, or China, or Japan. So that's a source, and destination is your virtual machine. So you can manage this traffic in and out based upon your requirement or based upon your criterias. So common case use cases: restricting access to specific ports. Assume that you have a virtual machine, the virtual machine which right now I created. So it's assume that it's we are going with an nginx server on that, so web server, right? So why do you need a traffic allowing all the ports on that particular subnet or virtual machine? So we'll only allow a specific, we'll have the demo on that. So we'll only allow a port 80. Can we do that? Yes, that can be done using a network security group. Define network segmentation from different types of application, that is also possible. Enforcing communication rules between virtual machines. So can one virtual machine, or basically can one subnet talk with another? Yes, that can be done, or that can be denied using a security group. So that is what we are trying to cover. So what is the security group, how you need to be aware, like, so I want to start using security group. So that I will say, okay, so remember, so there are a lot of parameters. The only one very important is the number between 100 and 14095. So So what is this between 100 and 4096? It's a priority number. So when you add a specific rule, you need to give a priority number. So can I give 1, 2? No, the Azure start with 100 and ends with 4096. So what happens with this? Rules are processed in priority order only, with lower number being processed before higher. So assume, to make it simple, we have three rules: rule 100, rule 101, rule 200. Rule 100 says allow 80 port. I say okay. Rule 101 says allow port number 90. So both are good. 80 and 90 are allowed. And there is one more rule, rule 200, which says deny any port from 85 to 95. So basically, based upon this rule, rule number 200, 90 should not be allowed. That's the case. Like when you see 85 and 90, 90 is not allowed in this range. But based upon the priority, so when a request comes, it will look for the first rule. If it's okay, then it will go ahead. If not, it will check the second rule, then it will go to third. So based on the second rule, the traffic is allowed. So irrespective of you defining that this should not be allowed, priority makes sure that it is not allowed, or basically it is neglected, because before that only we have a different rule. So this priority makes you the major part, where you, when you define a rules, the priority first, the starting from 100, it is processed. And service tags, so service tags are nothing but the same one. We'll go to demo and come back to service tags, so that will be more easy. So we have a virtual machine. Great. So let's go to resource group. We have Azure session. So within Azure session, we have a virtual machine called dev vm001. Now basic, I am trying to log in. I say let's log in. So yeah. So I hope everyone is seeing my screen. Lakshit, if you can confirm.
Yes, sir, it's visible. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Lakshit. So I'm just adding username and password based authentication, and I'm able to log in into my machine. So which clearly
So, sir,
says,
like Atul is saying, if you could zoom in a little bit.
oh, great. Sorry. Yeah. Feedback. Thank you. So can I think this is good now? Yeah. So I have a virtual machine which says dev001, which recently I logged in with the help of an IP based. So if I go back to my machine, I say, okay, this is IP. Everyone is trying to log in. But if you look at the networking section, right? So what I was trying to like theoretically say, the priorities and the security groups, that's what I have right now on my screen. So you see the priority, which says priority SSH 22 is allowed by default. So that's the reason I was able to do an SSH. Now, by default, you have different priorities, and these three, the last three which you say, allow VNet inbound, allow Azure load balancer bound, deny all inbound. So these are created by default by Azure for any security group that is created. So this is by default. Right. So only thing is, apart from that, you can create your own set of rules. So you might have an inbound rule, a traffic which is coming into your network, or a traffic which is going on outbound or leaving your network, that is VNet or subnet. What I'm trying to do as a demo bot, so simply I have this. So what I will do is apt, so sudo apt get update. I'm just trying to install an nginx. For those, like if you're not familiar with simple, like I will say install nginx on ubuntu. So you will simply have this. You simply it's an ubuntu or ubuntu. You can follow this particular, if you have CentOS or Linux, anything, you can simply follow a document. So the only purpose of this is to show what we are doing is apt sudo apt install nginx. Right, I'm just installing an nginx server. Let's see. Fine, we install, status is fine. Yeah, you follow. So I say sudo ufw allow. Ignore this one. This is basically I'm just have 1 second. Cool. I'm just trying to allow what I say a Nginx uh, port or a service on a firewall on Ubuntu. This is not related something on Azure. We are simply, so what I do sudo systemctl status Nginx. So I have Nginx which is running on my server, and probably it should be running on port 80. So what I will do is I will show everyone what I am trying to do is I will do a curl with the local host for port 80. Right, great. Welcome to Nginx. I think everyone is familiar. Like what I'm trying to do is I'm able to access my server from localhost. So so someone might say like let's I want to access this from outside. So it's very simple. You simply go to the virtual machine where it is hosted. So I say this is my virtual machine, and just copy the IP address and say, hey, this is my IP, or basically port 80. It's running on port 80. So you will try. It will keep on loading and loading and loading because the security group which we have at this virtual machine doesn't have any definition of whether to definition of allowing any port or port 80 on this particular. So you see only a port that is port 80. Sorry, 22. That is a default SSH getting allowed. So it will keep on loading and loading. It will try to reach, and Azure by default says, okay, the security group does not match or does not have any definitions of inbound that says it should be allowed. So it will be there only. So what I will do is being let's slide says, so number of process. So we will just try to add allow. We are not going with deny. We will just try to add an allow rule. So rule, yeah. So you simply go add an inbound rule. So I say source. It might be anywhere. Like you have a multiple. We'll cover the service tag later, but we have like any source is fine. Destination. So why not HTTP when I know a specific it's going to only a port 80TT. So always remember you can allow any like all the ports, but remember the only whatever you have a requirement open that only as a security best practice. I say allow. What is the priority? I say 310. Fine. Let's say allow Nginx. So you see this site cannot be reached. So what I will do is I will just add this rule. So it takes a few seconds in the Azure to this particular rule to get replicated, not added. So if I do a refresh, you will simply see that the rule is added, but it takes some seconds or minutes so that the traffic will be allowed on the back end. So yeah, I have an 310 which says allow any HTTP bond on 80 on any. So that's fine. Let me close it. I will open this now. Yeah, there you go. So the port or the security group, the main purpose was to restrict. So going back to the definition, it says you can allow you can basically create an inbound on to that they are evaluated based not this one network type by allowing a traffic based on source, destination, IP, port, or protocols. So that's what we are trying to do. So that's what we defined. We defined a rule which says allow the port 80 on any service. So someone say like I have a requirement. I have an on-premise which have a specific public IP. From that, traffic comes. Why not have an IP address? Go with an IP address range. You have a on-premise. I say no. I have a client sitting on a different location, and he want to reach my application. Only a client. No one is allowed. Why not? Just have an IP address. You want to access yourself? Add your IP address. Now say a requirement, a use case comes that I have. This is my virtual machine that is an API or UI based. Now there are multiple databases. I assume you have a databases like around 30 40 databases, and every day a new database comes created or destroyed, whatever. So the database range is not something fixed. So I say you, why not you have an IP address? We can add an IP address, but it gets changed. I said 30 databases we cannot add and manually manage them. So what Azure given is one good feature, very beautiful feature, was using a service stack. So 3 years back, it was not that mature, but today, when you see at service tags, majority of the services are available. So what the service tag defines or the benefit of that is a beauty. So you, instead of allowing an entire Azure or a specific or manually adding a network range, you just specify that you want to allow only a specific Azure service. So in this particular, I say service tag represents a group of iterator prefix from a Azure service. So you are not telling like, okay, Azure, I want to have 30 RDS IPs. You say I want MySQL access. I want an access from MySQL servers. So how you can do is, I say, yeah, why not? So go with service tag. You will have somewhere SQL. See, so you select SQL. All the traffic that is originating from an SQL service in Azure will be able to reach your virtual machine. So you say, so that's a very complicated one. Why I have only specific in one region. So Azure even gives that SQL in a specific region. So SQL traffic coming from West India will be only allowed to this particular what I can say, the virtual machine, or will be allowed from this particular security group. So only SQL you say. So I say no, not only SQL. So you will Mm, let me cancel it. So what are the services? There are huge number of services that Azure, and day by day Azure is also trying to add. So you have an API management, you have app service, you have container, lot of, you name it, you will have everything. So you just simply select that particular. I say let's go with SQL. And what is the custom that you are looking for? I will say MySQL or MS SQL based upon your database engine. You just add that, and the traffic from that particular service tag or that particular service will be only allowed. So that's a beauty. So mm, you are not you are not allowing a traffic from entire Azure. You are only allowing a traffic from a specific service to the. You can even granular it into a bit as per your requirement. So that's on Azure networking. We'll see what are the topics that we have. Yeah, so security service tags or security groups, and vnet pairing. Yeah, so far this is like the basics, where we have covered all this particular vnet. Within vnet we have subnets, and subnets what we can do. And one question or one point that I want to elaborate is, so security group. So I say security group. Like, so I have a network security group. So can you create? Yes, you can create. So I will say a common so I will have this in session only. I will say common security group, right? I will say east us 2 only. Let's get it deployed. So a security group can be attached to a NIC or a virtual machine network interface card, or it can be also attached to a subnet level. So you have a subnet. On that subnet, you can attach a security group and make sure that. So we have that will be a great example. I will show. So you see, we have multiple subnets, right? So we have a subnet of UI, API, and database. So everyone knows database has one port, right? 3306 for SSQL, MySQL. So why not allow only 3306 to this subnet and restrict everything? Can you do that? Yes. Just create a new, what I can say, a network security group that we created right now, and attach that to this subnet. So how can you do that? So security group, I think we just created network security group. So I have a common security group. So I will have this common security group. I will create a inbound rule which says add source any destination IP custom MySQL 3306 only DB allowed, right? So let it get created in the background. One thing is, this is a warning sign. It says it's allowed from anywhere, so that's fine for a demo purpose. We'll go with subnet. So you see, it says, do you want to associate any subnet with this security group? I say yes. Why not? So instead of this, I will say associate with the DB. I will say okay. Now that this particular database, that is dev DB subnet, have its security group attached that allows only 3306. So you want to see how it looks. Um, let's go to VNet. In VNet, you have one new feature that's called as a diagram. Diagram, yes. I'm not sure whether it is reflected. Yeah. So you see. So I have this subnet dev. You see a dev machine which has a NIC card. This is my VNet, and this is fine. Now you see this one. I'm going. So you see a subnet which is UI above. You see a API. You see a dev DB subnet which we have a security group that is common, which right now we associated. So can we associate a same security group with two subnets? You can do that, but just remember the diagram takes time to get reflected. But once you associate, you will have a common security group for all the database. So basically the technicality or the meaning of saying is that you can granularly create multiple security groups, and security is what you want to do on daily basis. It's a continuous process, it's not a product. You have to keep on increasing, or you have to keep on enhancing your security, so that at one point you will say, okay, we have somewhere secure. No one is safe in the world, but yeah, you need to make sure that you are improvising your security configurations. So that's all on the this one, and the second one is vnet pairing. Yeah, so I will zoom this out instead. So you see, so traffic. So what is the use of vnet pairing? So I have a vnet, right? I created a vnet which is in a specific region. So there is one more vnet, so the vnet might be in different region. So we say, why not vnet us or vnet uh, europe, and I want to deploy this in a europe region. Do we have Europe? I will go with North Europe. Review create. I'm not going with any configuration, just simply creating. Oh wait, I need to make some changes. IP address. Let's create one. So basically, uh, 72.0.0. Yeah. Why I'm going with this 172? The reason being, I said, you cannot have an IP address which is overlapping. So you have a VNet which is 10 dot range, another VNet that is a 10 dot range. So you cannot do a VNet pairing on. You cannot basically flow or send a traffic from one VNet to another because of this particular. So I will simply say uh, Europe Dev 001. So basically a Europe team that has this one. Simply one subnet is sufficient. So if you have a same IP range, you will get a conflict. So that's the reason I have gone with a separate range. So going back this, so it's basically a simple one of the feature is like, so you have an east to west right now, which we have at this point, and we recently created one more VNet that is in the West Europe, or in our scenario East Europe. So you want to flow traffic from one region to another. So you open your security groups to that particular IP address. So it's going outside your Azure network. So what Azure gives is something called as a VNet pairing. Now what this VNet pairing says is simple. Create a pairing between your two VNets, or it might be an so if you going back, so you can have a virtual network pairing, or you can have a global network pairing. So basically a pairing between a same region or different availability zones, or a global network pairing is basically between two regions. So this is within the same region, so you have connecting virtual network within same, and this is across two different regions. So how we can do is this. So once you have this VNets, simply go there and select one VNet. You will have a pairing. You add a pairing, so you are adding from dev 001, name it vnet here. So we are not adding, but we will simply select, oh, sorry, we will select. And once you add the traffic, the pairing will happen between two regions, and traffic can flow in and out. The major advantage, one of the biggest advantage in the security point, is your traffic does not flow outside the Azure. It will go through within the Azure backbone infrastructure. The traffic between virtual machine is paired using the Microsoft backbone infrastructure. So basically you are kind of having a private network between your two regions. Azure takes care of that particular security and the privacy points. So this was on the Azure. So I do have a slide for Azure. So like, don't open unnecessary ports. You can simply go through the slides. So it's basically the best practices one can follow. The major which I will always highlight is regular review and audit your rules to ensure they align with the security policies. So a lot of time happens that it has been 1 year or 2 year you haven't reviewed your security groups. That's a major concern. So keep on reviewing that. So that's where we are at this point on the network fundamentals or basics that I try to cover. If anyone have any queries on network, I will be happy to take the questions, or we will move with the second topic. I'm just yeah. Thank you, everyone. Let's start with the next topic, networks. So let's go back to dashboard, and second one is on storage. So Azure itself has one more lot of services. Sorry, not one more. So one service is called Azure Storage. So what storage basically? So storage itself has different categories based upon every like different definition. One is like you have a structured data, you have semi-structured, you have unstructured. So based upon your data requirement or based upon your data type, you can have you can start leveraging a storage service. So what are the types that Azure provide is Azure Blob, the first one which is heavily used. Azure Files. Azure Blobs is basically for unstructured data where you can simply put your text, binary, images, videos, you name it, you can put it on Azure Blobs, which is heavily scalable. You will see like you will see on the portal. I will walk through that. Azure Files. So what are Azure Files? So if everyone is aware of NFS, Network File System, so those services in the form of cloud is nothing but an Azure Files, where you can share your files on cloud or on premise as per your requirement. A queue, assume you have a queuing service, or you want to implement a queue service. One more feature is an Azure queues that you can simply use, which is like store your messages and process it later. Azure table, if you have a NoSQL structure or database, and you can simply use this particular service, simple to use. And the last one is Azure managed disk. This is basically what you use or you attach to your virtual machine. It's basically a hard disk, virtual hard disk that you have, and you can attach to your virtual machines and you can start using them. So basically these are the major services Azure provide. uh, so we will go through this. Let's create a storage account. So do we have storage? Yeah, we have a storage account. So I will create a storage account, and same. So every service or that you create need to be part of one resource group. So I say let's go with the same one. Storage account name, I will say not default, I will say training STG. Basically, naming conventions, those are mandatory in Azure. Like cannot lowercase, only lowercase letters and numbers. Okay, hyphens, special characters are not allowed. So I created something called as training stage. Training, why not dev? So since we are beginning dev, I will go with already taken. So I think this is not taken. Performance, standard, redundancy. I will zoom it out. So you see a lot of options in redundancy. So one says LRS, GRS, ZRS, and GZRS. So what are these is basically a replication of your data within Azure storage. So how you want to replicate? You see your data is not that relevant, or you say it is not that crucial or business critical, go with LRs. It's somewhere crucial and important that if you need to have a copy of that, if one region goes down, go with GRS. So based upon your criteria and your requirement, you will have these redundancy options. Before selecting this, I will go with LRS, and we will go through and see what exactly is the different options that we have. LRS. So you see LRS is basically you have data synchronized replicated 3 times within a single storage cluster in a single data center in a region. Assume that is East US 2. So you have a data that's a copy 1, copy 2, copy 3 in a same cluster. So what does this mean is if one region or one availability zone goes down, like so within your region, if you deployed one availability goes down, your data is lost. But if something happens to one copy, you have a copy to one copy three. So that's based upon the uh, availability, not on the availability zone, but a simple assumption that Azure in the background have three copies. One goes, you don't have to worry. But what if the entire availability zone goes? Then comes something called as ZRS. So the ZRS basically defines that your copy which you have, instead of keeping it in one availability zone, Azure will split it into three: copy one, copy two, and copy three. So one zone goes down, you don't have to worry. You have copy in two zones. So you have to make your application changes as per these configurations. But remember, LRS is something that you say, okay, I don't have a crucial data, it's fine. You have something that is very critical and you want to have that replications across zones, go with ZRS. What if an entire zone or entire region goes down, a primary goes down? So, so I will say go with an GRS. So GRS is basically geo redundant storage. It also creates three replicas, but this time along with the three replicas in the same zone, so an availability zone or region, it also replicates in another. So if you see this East US 2, so along with East US 2, you will also have a copy in US Central. So you have three copies here, you have three copies here. It is getting replicated or asynchronized. If this goes down, LRS goes down, you have another region where you can simply copy this. Sorry, if this region goes down, you have a copy in a different region. You can simply use that for your application or bring your application back. Okay. What if I want something combination of LRS and GRS? So that is GZRS. The way it says is very simple, the same like ZRS. It will have a copy in another region. So another region is here, Europe North, as well as it will have a copy in the same region within three availability zones: availability one, availability two, and availability three. So basically high availability. So if even availability zone goes down, you will have another availability zones to access your data. If a region goes down, then you have to go here because the replication costs you. It's not simply just says that go with GRS. So every time a data comes into your storage account, it gets replicated, data is transferred, the cost incurs. So based upon the costing also, you have to select your storage redundancy type. The more critical it is, the more replication you have to make sure you have. So that's an option that I was trying. I will go with LRS first, and we will try to replicate the data with a different region. So that's an GRS. So first I will go with LRS. Let me zoom back a bit. Next, no, not interested in networking, but yeah. So networking, security and networking with storage. Do you want to allow access public everywhere? Yes. Or do you want to allow only a specific VNet? So we have a VNet, right? We can simply say allow only this VNet traffic coming to this. So it will create basically an endpoint. But so this is, or you basically say I don't want to allow anything. You simply create a private endpoint. It's a service that goes some kind of like a service which gets from an endpoint traffic. So I will say let's go with the default one. I'm not going with this. Data production is fine. These are the options. Encryption by default, no. Tags is fine. Let's create a storage account. So I'm creating a storage account. So storage account, we have three. So yeah, once created, we will walk through and we'll cover the topics how you can access and storage account. We do have application from Azure called as Storage Explorer. We'll try to see the security features or a security parameters that we can access a storage account without getting admin level access on storage account. So this is getting created. We'll wait for a few minutes. I think I have 12 minutes. Definitely, I will wind it up. Yeah, resource got created. I will not go with this. I will go with where is storage accounts. This is a storage account. Come on. Training resource group. What happened? I created a storage account. Wait. So this is my resource group. Let me do a refresh. Yeah, there you go. Refresh worked. Yeah. Go storage account. Yeah. So what are the options we have in storage? So you see LRS, right? LRS, that is locally redundant storage. Okay. It is deployed in this one. Going to this, you will see what I was trying to say is this one, Azure Blob. So you will see a different types which I showed in the slide. Azure Blob, file, queue, tables. So discuss entirely different. You have to create your virtual disk, but container. So I will create a container. I will say myself, Raghu Reddy, and create it. I will create one more container, which I say UI components, UI CSS. So you can create container is a logical segregation kind of a folder structures that you create. So I say I go to Raghu Reddy. I say this is mine. I will say I want to upload something. So you can simply upload something directly from here. So I will say let upload a session sample image. Why I'm trying to upload is I will show how we can access this using different options on Azure. So I say this is good. We have a file. We have an Azure storage. One a small file uploaded to Blob. We will go back to storage. Along with Blob, you have file shares. You can simply create a file shares, queues, tables, networking. Coming back to the same. So you can simply say what I mean to say is like you simply have more flexibility on networking level. You can simply select a network that you want to add a VNet and allow a specific IP only to all of these resource. Everything is possible on network level. The more interesting part is an access key. What basically access keys is that you created a storage account. So what is the use of storage account when you can't use that? So you can use that. So developers, from developers point of view, you have your APIs, you have SDKs. So you need something to connect and do an operation. So this is basically that. So this is the key. Based upon your API and SDK that you select, you can use key, or I can simply copy this connection string and I will open and Azure Storage Explorer, application called Storage Explorer, right? Right. So what I'm trying to do is this is storage accounts. I don't have anything at this point. I will try to attach or I'll try to use a storage account service. It's you can see the options. It says connection string key or a shared access signature SAS or an account or name key. So what are these options? So you see this access keys authenticates application request to storage account keeps in your so always remember keys are very important, or I can say very when you provide a key to anyone, so they have an entire access or entire administration permission on that particular storage account. So be careful with whom you share the connection strings. Keep these keys in your key vault and access from there instead of directly giving to a developer or any applications. This is like a full access, not a limited one. So a requirement comes to my team says like I don't want to give these keys because there is a developer who want to access my storage account for a time being only to a specific blob of for a specific time frame. So is this possible? That's what we have a slide or we'll try to cover. So you have sync keys. These keys can be used to authorize access to data in your storage account via shared. Full access on storage account, key rotation is a security practice. So access keys, as I showed, you can simply use. One more is called as SAS, that is a shared access signature. Shared access signature is basically you create a key itself, but that key is something of that you share with whomever you want. It might be client you cannot trust, but you need to give them a certain access, a certain category or certain permission level access to them, limited access along with time bound access to resource for a specific period of time. Is this possible? I will show you how it is possible. So I will create a key. So you can simply select which services you want to allow resource type. Is it a service, container, object? So what is the permission that you want to give? I will see. Let's not give a write permission since a client is coming on. Let's not also give a delete. Let him list, read or add. That says a permanent delete. So I will just based upon my requirement I will select a permission and simply you select a time frame also. So I say let's starting from today till tomorrow, that's one day, 1 month, 1 year. So as per your requirement you can simply select them and assume you can even granular that by adding a specific IP. So you have a client address, so you can add an IP address and say give the give this particular key to that client. If he's trying to access from outside, he won't be able. So even his office IP address can be whitelisted. What will be the traffic type? What is the signing key? So so I will say for now 0.0.0.0, or I will say 192.0.0.0. Just for an this one. So from 8 we'll go with 11. Generate. I'm just, you can simply generate this one. So you will see this particular getting generated. So you can either share the connection string with them, or a token or SAS URL with them. So based upon the application, so you share with them, they will be able to have access at that point. That is one. Let's go with an access key, how you can access them. So I will say let's copy this. So I will say let's go with key. I will click on next. It's asking for a connection string. I have given that. Next, I will say connect. Make sure you have your firewall enable, have this particular protocol enabled or allowed. So you see a blobs containers. I will expand. So you will see two containers that I created, Ragu and UICSS. So within Ragu you have a file. So that's what we uploaded, or uh, from the portal itself. So this is one of the application that you can start using. So if you're newer beginner to Azure storage and you want to see how it works, beautiful UI based an application that you can leverage over there. Sorry, so that's on Azure security as well as Azure storage. So you have a container, start exploring. You can use one more interesting, which is not in the slide. You can do a basic research, is basically a static website. So you can simply host, you have to create a web UI named folder in your container, or basically in your blob storage container, and put your files and the index path over here. Then you can simply host a static website on your storage account. So that's one more beautiful feature of Azure. So with this, I will bind up my last slide, storage, and this being said, we have covered this SaaS. Remember, SaaS is very beautiful, very but make sure that you have a restricted access instead of having a full access. And last one is a Q&A. These are all the official documents that you can use and you can start learning. And thank you everyone, thank you very much. And if you have any queries, I'm open for that, questions and answers.
Yes, sir. There are just some like two, three queries there. So first is, isn't there a screen, right? Is this VNet or VPN term similar?
VNet.
VNet and VPN.
Yeah, so difference, you are asking about the VNet and VPN, right?
Yes, sir.
So basically VNet, VPN, right? It's a private network. So uh, assume that you have your on-premise and you have your cloud. So can you have a VNet in on-premise? No, you cannot. So VPN is something that there can be a client side, client to client, or a site client to site, or a site to site. So you establish a private connections between your two different infrastructures. But when it comes for VPN to get created, right, on your on-premise, it need to be a physical server or physical hardware, which may be a firewall, uh, any Palo Alto or anything. So that firewall will have a VPN configuration that gets. But when it comes to a cloud, the concepts are different. So even you have a VPN service on cloud, so you can deploy a virtual machine, you can have a VPN over there, and you can establish. So VNet is something that is based on a network level segregations. VPN is not a network level segregation. It's a service that uses or helps you to establish a secure connection. VNet and VNet, you can do a pairing. So within that connection is called a secure connection, but that's handled by Azure. That's not an VPN, but that's a secure connection. So differentiating, VNet is a network level segregation or a uh, networking concept, or VPN is a service endpoint where you try to connect to another endpoint through a secure model or using a IPsec tunnel.
Okay, so the next question is, how to tackle connectivity issues between my on-premise network and an Azure VNet. How should I troubleshoot and resolve this issue?
Simple is your telnet. So simple applications like telnet. So what you can do is like, always remember, so traffic when grows from one network to another, so you have to have one machine or establish a simple, so assume, so you are trying to reach from your on-premise to VNet, right? So you can simply host an application over there, a simple basic application, and you can try to reach that. So if it's not allowing, the basic troubleshooting steps is whether the service is up or not over there, whether the network level segregation, network level security groups, even if there might be a security group attached on a subnet level. So all these subnets. So first, always remember, on a development environment, allow everything for a time being and check if you are able to access or not. If you are able to access, then close that particular connection and start gradually moving from one point to another, from service, then go to the network level, then go to your security groups level, on that way. If allowing all the security group fully, and even after that you are not reaching, that's something on the application side, not on the network level. But remember, this is only for testing. The moment you are able to understand, please close the all connections. uh,
Yeah, so the next question is about, can I route this traffic from one subnet in an Azure VNet through NVA2?
Through
Uh, can through NVA.
nba. I'm not sure that what exactly nba that
Okay,
means.
yeah, so like
Let
yeah, it's a network. So here's assisted network virtual appliance.
You can do definitely network virtual appliance. So so my question over there is, your network appliance is on premise or is it on this one, the cloud based?
Okay,
Basically,
so
I will
okay, he has
answer.
clarified. He's asking,
Say,
yes,
go
so he has clarified how should I configure route tables and NSGs.
That's an entirely different topic or sections. If you want, I can definitely share those links after this call, and you can do. So basically, route tables is basically on subnet levels, so where you will allow traffic going from one subnet to another. So that's not a restriction, but there's basically telling a flow. So network security group is like allow or deny. Route table is basically telling how to reach a specific point. So how do you reach there? So that route mapping, like you go to that subnet, so how to reach, that's a route. So those are different. I can definitely share a document on that if required. I have not covered in this one
Sure,
that
and
much.
yeah, and the next question is about okay. So again, I guess this is again the out of context. It's can you deep dive? No, can you just give through a little bit on blob storage? When to use blob storage?
So it depends on your requirements. So assume that you have a SQL database. So you cannot use blob. So blob is something where you can push your application image unstructured. So you have images, you have videos, you have a large file text, right? You have RPM files. Anything that you see is something you can upload. You can simply put it over there, which you can. So one of the use cases like UI developers, right? They have a lot of images on the front end, so they will clip that in a blob storage and everyone can access from there. But you cannot create a database on the blob storage. So it's an unstructured database type structure where you can put it in the blob.
Okay, and the
How do you make an
okay, the
architecture
second last
diagram?
question is, how do you make these architecture diagrams? Okay, so
So
this might be the one which you have used in your PPT.
I don't. So I use draw.io, and draw.io is something very like lot of uh, engineers use across industry. It's a very beautiful, and they have enhanced a lot of images. Usually we used to copy paste. Now they have a lot of icons also. So draw.io is where we create an IO. And one more, remember, Azure, AWS, all Google providers officially they have architecture based blocks where they give an entire architecture as well as with their explanations. So you should definitely reach that pages and you will see interesting architectures and their explanation. But how to create, draw.io is the answer.
Yeah, and again, okay, I guess this is from any student. So he's asking, can you give a quick roadmap about how to get into the networking and security field?
Networking onto, so networking, you need to have your fundamentals like what is subnet, what is routing, what are the different routing protocols, what are the protocols like http ssh, or how they work on which application layers. So all those, and so you start with documentation. To be frank, Azure, you start with documentation. They have very good documentation for a beginner as well as an expertise. You learn there. They do have a different exercises. So if you're going with an Azure network section, at the bottom of that page you will see an simple, I can say it's kind of an exercise. they will teach you how to do this particular along with screenshot images and all those. So that will be a good start for anyone who want to learn on Azure, any service. It might be network or it might be security.
Okay, and the last question we have is it important to learn PowerShell scripts to be a DevOps engineer?
No, so what I will say is like you have a partial any programming language, it's add an advantages. For DevOps, it says you start with there are multiple tools. So DevOps is a like mindset. It's not a tool that you learn something. It might be PowerShell or it might be any tool. So DevOps itself is a mindset, how you do processes, how you integrate a processes, how you bring a culture into organization. So tools, there are a lot of. You don't have to worry. If you're coming to DevOps, have a mindset how to implement a process and how to reach a target audience on that. But having a PowerShell is advantage, but I will say not a mandatory.
Okay, so that's it, guys. If you have any other questions, please let us know. Otherwise, maybe so. This is the end of the questions, sir.
Thank you.
Now, and thank you for joining in, sir. And it was really nice hands-on session with you. And for all our listeners and viewers, those who want to revise the session, this will be available on YouTube. You can watch it anytime, whenever you want. And also, we have done the LinkedIn post already, so you can just check out and do, go through all the session that sir explained and all the services, and definitely all the Microsoft Learn has the really great documentation you should go through. You should try, right, sir. So, thank you, sir. Thank you for joining in. It's my pleasure to host you here, and looking forward for more enlightenment from you, sir. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you everyone. Have a nice day.
Yeah, thank you, sir. Like this.